Just a brief introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I hope everybody can hear me.
Can.
Yeah, okay, thank you. We have our Dean here, Prof. Major Dr. Nabila Abdullah, and our faculty members. So, bertemu kembali untuk siri webinar kita yang seterusnya. I'm Dr. Marni, your host for today. Jadi sesi webinar kita pada kali ini adalah khas untuk staf warga fakulti pendidikan serta pelajar-pelajar postgrad, yang mana program ini atau webinar siri kali ini dianjurkan bersama oleh pejabat jaringan dan industri bersama research ethics dan juga bahagian corporate fakulti pendidikan. So secara amnya kita akan diterangkan, diberi penerangan tentang concepts of research ethics, why research ethics is important, the objectives, dan yang saya rasa penting, the application procedures, which include the forms and paperworks, dan juga other important aspects that we need to know. So, tajuk sekolah webinar kita pada hari ini adalah Awareness on Research Ethics for Social Science Researchers, yang akan disampaikan oleh yang bahagia Associate Professor Datin Dr.Sarina Muhammad Yusof. She is the Deputy Chair of UiTM Research Ethics Committee dan juga merupakan Datin adalah pensyarah daripada Faculty of Sports Science and Recreation with area of specialization in exercise physiology. So selamat datang Datin, thank you so much for your willingness to share this information, especially for us today. Yeah, so we have about 2 hours for today's session with Datin, including Q&A. For your information, we have our postgrad students also listening with us through the UFB live streaming. Yeah, I think without further ado, the Google Meet is yours, Datin. Thank you.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Professor Dr. Mawarni. Yang berusaha Profesor Madya Dr. Nabila, Dekan Fakulti Pendidikan, kerana sudi menjemput saya. Tak lupa juga kepada semua pengurusan tertinggi Fakulti Pendidikan dan rakan-rakan sejawat daripada Fakulti Pendidikan. Ramai bila saya tengok muka ni, familiar faces yang saya pernah bertemu, yang kita pernah bekerja bersama. Dan saya juga nampak kawan daripada FSR pernah ada join bersama-sama dengan kita pagi ini. Terima kasih sekali lagi. Saya ingin merakamkan salam daripada pengurusi REC, iaitu yang berbahagia Prof. Nur Ashikin, kepada semua warga Fakulti Pendidikan. So saya tidak nak melengahkan masa, so let us straight away pergi kepada presentation pada pagi ini. So basically our presentation this morning will be divided into two sections, whereby the first part of the presentation, it will be the awareness how research ethics come about, and then on the second part of the presentation we will look into the necessary forms. Okay, all the forms required in submitting the application. So basically kalau kita semua kenal, ini ialah bangunan chancellery kita. So REC is directly under pejabat Timbalan Nat Chancellor Penyelidikan dan Inovasi, iaitu yang berbahagia Prof. Nazif. Then so basically our this morning discourse will be comprising, we will be talking about the concept of research ethics and research ethics governance in UiTM, and of course not forgetting the research ethics application procedures. So before I start, let us begin. Who cares about research ethics? Yeah, who cares, right? So before I go further, let's take a vote. When we conducting research, do you think it is important to protect the rights and interests of your research participants? Yes? No? Although I may not be able to see, I know the answer will be yes, definitely, right? Second question, do you think it's important to protect the rights and interests as a researcher? I'm sure this is a big yes from all of us. So research ethics this came about from the awareness that it all began in Second World War, where the Nazi physician has conducted various experiments on prisoners of war. These prisoners of war, they were subjected to several ill treatment, such as, they were immersed in cold water, and then they were subjected to several experiments without the consent. Of course, being prisoners of war, your voice will not be heard, right? And in 1946, 15 Nazis physicians were brought to trial, and that trial was known as the Nuremberg trial in 1946. So out of that trial, in 1947, the Nuremberg Code was introduced. What was the content of this Nuremberg Code? Basically, there are 10 important content of this code came about. That first, voluntary human consent is essential when conducting human research. Secondly, experimental results should be beneficial to society. Anticipated results should justify the experiments, and all experiments should avoid unnecessary physical and mental suffering. No experiment should be conducted if there is a chance of death or disability. And of course, all human trials should minimize the risk to the subjects. Way back, we did not regard our subjects or respondents as participants. Now we do not use the word subjects any longer, but we use the word participant menggantikan subject. So it is also proper that preparation and facilities are to be taken into consideration in order to protect our subjects. And all these experiments should only be conducted by qualified persons, and subject must be able to withdraw at any point of time without any penalty. And of course, termination of experiment if results are known likely to cause injury, disability, or death to the participants. And at the same time, before this Belmont report came about, there's another popular study which was conducted in America way back. This is a 40-year studies conducted way back in 1932 until 1972. And that study is known as the Tuskegee syphilis study. And this study has taken the impoverished syphilis positive African American, where they were lied to and misled into the name of science. So this study involving 600 positive African American, where they took part in this syphilis study. And all these participants were not provided informed consent, and they were denied to access of penicillin. Penicillin was the one to treat syphilis at that time, which penicillin is a proven treatment for syphilis. As a result, many died, infected others with the disease, and passed congenital syphilis to their children. And therefore, in 1979, there is a research ethics core principle was again introduced, where three important elements was being highlighted. The three important elements was all research should respect for person, where all individuals should be treated as autonomous agents. Persons with diminished autonomy are entitled to protection, especially the vulnerable subjects. Who are the vulnerable subjects? We will go into detail later. Second principle of this Belmont report, beneficence or non-maleficent whereby beneficent here means balancing the benefits against risk, whereby the non-maleficent means avoiding causation of harm, where researchers should maximize possible benefits and minimize possible harm as much as possible. And thirdly, the important core principle in this Belmont report, where it should be distributive justice, where all subjects or all participants should be treated equally, and selection of participants should be scrutinized, that no one will be selected based on race, ethnicity, class, or other factors. Those are the three important core principles in research ethics, and this was introduced way back in 1979. As you have seen, the example that I have shown earlier basically focused on the medical science or medical experiments or medical study. How about social science? In 2018, the European Commission has come up with a statement which is specifically meant for social scientists, where among the component of these statements were all social science and humanities research should respect human dignity and integrity, ensuring honesty and transparency, respect individual autonomy, protecting vulnerable individuals, ensuring privacy and confidentiality, promoting justice and inclusiveness. Of course, as we have mentioned just now, minimizing the harm, and of course, maximizing the benefits, sharing the benefits with the disadvantaged population, as well as respecting and protecting the environment. Those which I've highlighted are the new contents or components in social science and humanities research. So as I've mentioned just now, if we look at this, one of the important element is giving autonomy to our subject or participant, whereby we have to obtain their consent or the informed consent prior to conducting the study. So what is actually informed consent? Informed consent is a way we indicate how we respect our participant or our subject as an autonomous agent. So that is the reason why we need to get informed consent from our participants. What are the contents of the informed consent? Information on the study to be conducted. We must ensure that our participant can comprehend, understand what they are going to encounter. And of course, there should be an element of voluntariness. Okay, so when we say all the information, it should be communicated clearly in layman terms. Quite often, we in REC, we receive a number of informed consent from applicants where they use technical jargons. Most of our subjects or participants, they will not be able to understand all these technical jargons. And one of the important reasons why we prepare the informed consent is to tell our participants what is our study all about. So that is the reason why the language that we use should be easy enough to be understood by the participants. And we must ensure that the participants understand what they have heard or read. And we must make sure there is no coercion elements in the recruitment of our subjects or participants. So that is the reason why the element of voluntariness is important. And a part of giving informed consent, when we are dealing with minors, those under the age of 18, they are considered as minors, we must be giving them an assent form. What is an assent? Assent is the agreement of a minor which not able or whom not able to give legal consent to participate in the research. When dealing with minors, first and foremost, we need to get consent from the parents or the legal guardians. And on top of that, we are also required to get assent from the children. Meaning, if you are dealing with minors from the age of 7 until 17, we need to give an assent form to them where the statement in the assent form in the assent form should be similar to the one in our informed consent, but it is stated in a way that these minors could understand. So the minors may indicate the assent orally, or they may sign the form. So if assent has been obtained orally, investigators are responsible for providing documentation or proof of the assent, where we need to have a witness to also sign the form. So I will show later what's the assent form look like. So another term which I have introduced earlier was vulnerable groups. Who are the vulnerable groups? Vulnerable groups are individuals who may have an increased likelihood of being wrong or where additional harm may incur. And this vulnerable group may be refugees, irregular immigrants, sex workers, people with cognitive impairments, dissidents, traumatized people, people in dependent relationship with the researcher. Example, our students. Our students is considered as vulnerable group, especially when we are conducting a study onto them. So a study need to be done. How can we do that? Well, we can always ask somebody else to conduct the study on our behalf, so that the students may not feel that they are being coerced into the study. Apart from what I have listed, other can also be considered as vulnerables are babies who are less than 6 months, people with weak immune system, people who are suffering chronic illnesses, pregnant women, older people who are older than 65 years old, and of course, childcare or nursing home workers. These are the people that we consider as vulnerable groups. So what does that mean? When we deal with them, extra attention ought to be given. We must be able to identify what are the risks, and on top of that, we also need to mitigate the risk. So next question, why is research ethics important? Research ethics is important in order to protect our research ecosystem. Who are the ecosystem in our in UiTM? Basically, it is our participants. We need to protect them. We as researchers, we also need to be protected. The research, we need to ensure that all research that we presented or that we came up with or we published are valid and reliable. And of course, lastly, we need to protect our beloved UiTM. These are the reasons why research ethics is important, and that is the reason why all of us need to apply for ethics approval. So again, why is research ethics important? Research ethics is important as a reflection of respect to those who participate in our research. It will also ensure that no unreasonable, unsafe, or thoughtless demands are made by researchers. At times, we researchers, we can be very ambitious. So we forgot that we may induce risk to our participant. You may be saying, we social scientists, how risky can our study be? You know, if we pose questions, sensitive questions that can cause psychological risk to our participants. So we also must ensure that sufficient knowledge will be shared by all concerned, especially this can be written in our information sheet. And also, we are also to ensure that it will impose a common standard in all the above respects. And again, why research ethics is important? It has become norm as an expectation for research activity, and it also has become a professional requirement for practitioners, especially in some discipline. Of course, medicine, we all know about that. Even in psychology, a research ethics approval is required. Okay, so apart from that, it is also a requirement to comply when obtaining grants, funding, and in some publication, it is a requirement to have research ethics approval. So this is a proof where in our national grant guidelines, it has stated clearly that research ethics approval is required. Kalau kita rujuk dalam garis panduan skim FRJS under 2.1.14, jelas clearly has been written that kelulusan jawatan kuasa etika pendidikan manusia atau haiwan perlu dilaporkan ataupun dilampirkan bersama in the first progress report. So ini memang keperluan daripada Kementerian Pendidikan Malaysia. And another proof that ethics approval is required in national grant application is written kat sini juga dekat FRJS. Kalau kita tengok, it has been stated that application number 4, application of this research is subject to ethical committee approval. This is another proof that research ethics is required when applying for national grant. Some may say, selama ni saya publish, I was never being asked pun untuk tunjuk proof yang that my study has obtained ethics approval. Okay, yang ini saya dapat jumpa dalam International Journal of Educational Research. In fact, faktor taklah tinggi sangat, 1.7. Kalau kita tengok guide to apa ni researcher tu, which I've highlighted kat situ, use of patient images or case detail, studies on patients or volunteers, require ethics committee approval and informed consent, which should be documented in the paper. So this is a proof that consent has to be obtained by or for any named individuals or organization. Another publication, Journal of Educational Psychology, also requires, authors are required to state in writing that they have complied with APA ethical standards in treatment of the sample, human or animal, to describe details of treatment. So ini dia bukti-bukti yang menunjukkan mungkin sebelum ni kita tak pernah diminta. But now if you look at in most of the journal article, especially kalau in psychology, memang selalunya dia akan perlukan that statement. So institutional approval. So that is the reason when we produce or when we prepare the approval letter, there's always a code in our approval letter. Okay, in UiTM, research ethics approval is mandatory for all research involving human subjects. So ini telah termaktub dalam dasar garis panduan dan pelaksanaan etika pendidikan yang melibatkan manusia. And this dasar or this policy has been tabled pada tahun in 2019 and of course telah mendapat kelulusan Senate pada 9 Mei 2019. Saya rasa semua dekan-dekan telah pun mendapat arahan yang meminta semua penyelidik di UiTM, tak kiralah sama ada staff ataupun pelajar pasca siswazah maupun pelajar sarjana muda, perlu mendapatkan kelulusan etika bila melakukan penyelidikan yang melibatkan manusia maupun haiwan. As for us, kita adalah yang melibatkan manusia, jadi semua permohonan, all application should go to REC. Kalau melibatkan animals, it should go to UiTM care. Okay, so which are the project that require ethics approval? So yang pertama, definitely as I've mentioned just now, kalau that research involving human participants, animal participants, study that use human products. Some of you may be using, nak tengok kulit ke, nak tengok serpihan kuku ke. Okay, itu pun juga memerlukan ethics approval. Study that potentially impacts human participant. Ini yang saya maksudkan tadi. Being social scientist, kita mungkin tidak menggunakan human product, kita mungkin tak withdraw blood daripada human, but some of our statement in our questionnaire may impact our participants. So that is one of the reasons that we need to obtain ethics approval. So UiTM Research Ethics Committee was being approved by UiTM Vice Chancellor way back in 2004. I joined UiTM Research Ethics Committee in 2009. So daripada 2009 sampai sekarang to 2020, you can imagine how long I was already been in UiTM REC. So our UiTM REC is being chaired by Professor Dr. Nurashikin Muhammad Noor. She's from medical faculty, and in the UiTM Research Ethics Committee comprised of members from UiTM as well as other academic institutions. We have also on board lay person, we have legal person on board, and our meetings is every third Tuesday of every month. So far for this year, we have never failed, although during the MCO. We do have our meetings monthly, if not physically or face-to-face, we have our online meeting every month without fail. So now let's take a look. Where do REC are being stationed or being put? We are under, dengan kelulusan daripada Senate pada tahun 2015, kita telah diletakkan dalam tier 2, where in the tier 2, the executive level, where we are supposed to report to JKIPU. So ini dia yang saya dah highlightkan, Jawatan Kuasa Etika Penyelidikan ataupun JEP in English REC, diletakkan di bawah Jawatan Kuasa Induk Penyelidikan Universiti. So we are reporting to them. Dan perlu diingatkan, REC adalah kita kategorikan sebagai sebuah jawatan kuasa yang bebas. Ia tidak terletak di mana-mana, tetapi ia directly di bawah jawatan di bawah TNC Penyelidikan dan Inovasi. So I also would like to announce dengan bangganya bahawa Jawatan Kuasa Etika Penyelidikan UiTM adalah antara salah satu jawatan kuasa etika penyelidikan, antara 13 jawatan kuasa etika penyelidikan yang telah berdaftar dengan NPRA. NPRA ini adalah badan yang akan regulate kita, maka kita ni subjected to audit setiap 3 tahun sekali, di mana segala aktiviti kita, SOP kita akan disemak dan akan diperakukan oleh NPRA ini, iaitu under National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency. Social scientists may be asking, apa pentingnya kita berada ataupun kita berdaftar dengan NPRA ini? Kalau kita tengok kat sini, kita hanya ada 13 saja di keseluruhan di Malaysia ini yang berdaftar. Maksudnya, kalau kita tidak berdaftar dengan NPRA, andai kata ada sebarang penyelidikan yang melibatkan penggunaan bahan-bahan alat ataupun drugs yang perlu dilakukan oleh saintis kita, kita perlu mendapat kelulusan daripada jawatan kuasa etika di luar UiTM yang berdaftar dengan NPRA ini supaya kita dapat melaksanakan penyelidikan itu di UiTM. Of course, salah satu sebab pada asalnya kenapa kita ada REC dulu adalah disebabkan kita dah mula ada fakulti farmasi dan juga fakulti perubatan. That was where it began. Dan bagi kita social scientist, kita mungkin terasa tidak directly terlibat dengan ini, tetapi if you were to conduct study in Ministry of Health premises, contohnya kita nak disseminate questionnaire pada patients yang pergi ke klinik atau hospital, kita perlu mendapat kelulusan jawatan kuasa etika perubatan Malaysia. That is a must. So because yang tu telah diketahui, any premise Kementerian Kesihatan perlu mendapat kelulusan jawatan kuasa etika penyelidikan kita on top of kelulusan daripada jawatan kuasa etika UiTM. So the objective of REC in UiTM is first to examine ethical issues in research proposal. Second is to ensure that all research conducted in UiTM are compliant with all the important document. Satu important document yang menjadi rujukan kita ialah the GCP ataupun Good Clinical Practice Guideline. So semua ahli-ahli REC perlu lulus, mengambil dan lulus GCP ini. And then of course lah, segala kita punya research itu should comply to the Declaration of Helsinki World Medical Association. Ada statement yang panjang lebar yang kita perlu ikut dan comply with. And thirdly, of course, to protect the rights and well-being of human subject. That is to ensure that no intentional harm is inflicted onto them. And not forgetting is to protect the researchers and the university as well. Okay, itu antara sebab ataupun objektif of REC. Again, saya nak sebutkan di sini, the membership of REC tadi dah disebutkan, the minimum membership of REC is 5 and it should comprise of a chair, 2 laypersons or 2 members who are layperson. Layperson maksudnya yang tidak berada dalam sistem kita yang memahami bahasa-bahasa yang bukan technical, and members from a religious institution. Of course, we must have a lawyer on board, and one member should have knowledge with current experience in professional care, counseling or treatment of people, and not forgetting members with knowledge and current experience in areas of research that are regularly considered by REC. So, ini adalah antara kita punya research ethic members yang berkuat kuasa daripada 2018 until hujung tahun ini. So ini dia antara orang-orang yang bertanggungjawab yang akan melihat kepada permohonan semua daripada members of UiTM, students UiTM atau sesiapa saja yang hendak melaksanakan research di UiTM. And REC is being assisted by REC Secretariat, iaitu REC Secretariat directly di bawah Research Management Center or RMC. And this REC Secretariat ini is led by Dr. Amirah Abdul Rahman, who is also the REC Secretary, and she's the coordinator of Research Ethics and in Ethics and Publication Units. InsyaAllah, I think Dr. Amirah will be joining us later, whereby saya meminta Dr. Amirah untuk menunjukkan nanti apakah borang-borang yang boleh digunakan atau yang perlu digunakan in applying ethics approval. Selain daripada Dr. Amirah will be assisted by EO, Adila and Amy, who is the clerk, and also Puan Ainul, who's assisting Dr. Amirah. So let's take a look at the application, ethics application in 2019. Kalau kita tengok, in 2019, ethics application diketuai ataupun banyak dihantar oleh daripada health sciences. About 285 applications from health sciences, followed by sports and recreation 205. That's my faculty. And kita ada daripada medical faculty kita ada 110 permohonan. So nampaknya di sini lebih banyak permohonan itu yang datang daripada health sciences dan juga sport science. Dan fakulti-fakulti lain sedang mengejar di belakang lah. Ini bermula daripada tahun 2019 di mana selepas penguatkuasaan semua pelaksanaan ataupun all research to be conducted by UiTM staff, students or anyone to conduct the study in UiTM is to obtain ethics approval. So di sebelah kanan what you can see bilangan ataupun application yang kita kategorikan sebagai MMR tu more than minimal risk. Kalau social scientist definitely tidak akan dikategoriskan di sini sekiranya tidak melibatkan vulnerable subject. Kalau melibatkan vulnerable subject, yes, it will be considered as more than minimal risk. Yang orange itu minimal risk, basically kalau you gunakan questionnaire tidak melibatkan vulnerable subject, tidak menggunakan isu-isu sensitif, you will be categorized under the minimal risk tadi. And the one in grey adalah bilangan research yang mendapat status conditional approval. Meaning when they submit the first time, this application are being written to them due to some corrections that they are supposed to make. So ini antara apa yang berlaku pada tahun lepas. So let us look at now why or when do I need to apply research approval. It's always recommended for students, kalau students ni, when you are preparing, especially for the undergraduate student, while preparing for the research proposal, startlah menghantar ethics approval application. But for postgraduate student, it is always best hantar your application selepas you punya depend or DRP, Defend of Research Proposal. Sebabnya kalau you hantar sebelum tu, if during your DRP, you know, you're bound to have some correction or suggestions here and there, you mungkin terpaksa buat beberapa kali pembetulan selepas you dah submit. So that's why we always advise for postgraduate students, start submitting your ethics application after you have passed your DRP. And of course, ethics approval need to be obtained before data collection. Recently, we had one or two cases where applicant has already conducted the study. You know, suddenly they aware that, oh, they need to get ethics approval. But they have already collected the data. So they came to REC, presented during one of our meetings. And of course, we do not provide approval retrospectively, which means that we will not be able to provide any ethics approval for study which has been conducted. Itu tak boleh kita lakukan. Okay, so bagaimana nak memohon ethics approval ini? So kalau di Faculty Education, all application should go through the research committee. I'm sure the Faculty of Education, you have your research committee. So semua application ini harus melalui research committee. While research committee lah kemudian akan bersidang di peringkat faculty dan mereka akan memutuskan sama ada yang ini, selalunya mereka mencadangkan sama ada yang ini adalah minimal risk ataupun more than minimal risk. Tapi kadang-kadang ada juga case fakulti mencadangkan minimal risk tetapi selepas Secretariat screen mereka dapati some studies utilizing minus. So immediately kalau you use minus as your participants of the you will be categorized as more than minimal risk. So what is the implication kalau more than minimal risk? Tak ada masalah besar, you just need to present before full board, itu sahaja. So masa itu kita akan perhatikan, kita akan tengok apakah langkah-langkah keselamatan untuk menjaga the welfare of your participants. So researchers who are not from UiTM, but they want to conduct study in UiTM, they are required to submit their proposals to the Secretariat, to RC Secretariat. So contohnya kami juga menerima beberapa proposal daripada universiti luar yang nak datang nak ke UiTM ataupun nak buat study among our staff, among our students. Mereka ni diperlukan mendapat ethics approval. Kalau kita tengok di email kita during this MCO ni, ramai orang yang buat tentang COVID-19 punya study. So ada di antara kawan-kawan kita yang buat. So what happens? RC Secretariat akan menulis kepada mereka, meminta mereka ini menghantar ataupun memohon ethics approval sebelum melaksanakan. Sebab selalunya kita terpaksa melihat apa yang terkandung dalam questionnaire yang mereka berikan. So, okay, sekiranya kalau kita nak melakukan research itu involving other bodies, kita tak perlu mendapatkan ethics approval daripada mereka, tetapi we need approval sahaja. Melainkan kalau kita deal dengan Ministry of Health punya premises, hospital, itu kita memerlukan MREC ataupun Medical Research and Ethics Committee approval. Selain daripada itu, I'm sure kalau di Fakulty of Education banyak deal dengan students di sekolah, you need to get approval from Ministry of Education di mana you akan menghantar. Jadi kita di RC kita akan bertanyakan sama ada sudahkah you mendapat kelulusan daripada EPRD. Begitu juga kalau you nak buat study involving preschools ke nurseries ataupun dengan mereka yang tinggal di pusat-pusat jagaan, kita akan bertanyakan sama ada have they obtained any approval from any ministries that they wanted to collaborate with. Okay, so in ethics application, selalunya kita kategorikan kepada dua categories. Satu, the minimal risk research where you do not require any presentation, and second is the more than minimal risk research. Again, saya katakan tadi, what is the more than minimal research? Minimal risk research, where the probability and magnitude of possible harms is greater than those encountered in everyday life. Contohnya, kita nak ambil darah. Of course, kalau tak silap saya, di Faculty of Education kita ada pendidikan jasmani kan. That's why ramai saya kenal kawan-kawan daripada fakulti ataupun pendidikan jasmani. Kita kadang-kadang kita perlu melihatkan kandungan laktat bila kita buat sesuatu senaman, laktat darah. Tetapi mengambil darah ini bukanlah benda yang kita lakukan hari-hari. Therefore, sebab itulah bila ada saja blood withdrawal, kita akan kategorikan dalam more than minimal risk research. Okay, so study-study melibatkan vulnerable group will be categorized as more than minimal risk. Tapi kalau you hanya melakukan study yang melibatkan questionnaire and the study must not involve the study involve an anonymous data, kita akan kategorikan ini sebagai minimal risk research dan dia selalunya akan masuk dalam what we call the expedited review. Maksudnya, once application you sampai saja ke RC Secretariat, akan terus diberikan kepada reviewers where the reviewers akan review the application dan seterusnya akan beri keputusan. So lebih cepat dan selalunya dalam masa sebulan atau dalam masa 3 minggu surat kelulusan or the approval letter will be issued. Tetapi kalau yang more than minimal risk ni, you will be required to present during our full board meeting that is on the 3rd Tuesday of every month. Dan ada lagi satu kategori yang saya tidak masukkan di sini, iaitu kategori yang kita namakan exemption. Because some publisher ataupun some publication, journal publication memerlukan surat pengesahan daripada RSC mengatakan this particular study has been exempted untuk ethics review. Contohnya terdapat juga some studies kita masih lagi memperkukuhkan, memantapkan study-study yang mana kita boleh masukkan ke dalam kategori exemption ini, sebab kita perlu mendapatkan juga pandangan daripada beberapa fakulti yang terlibat. Satu yang saya boleh tunjuk contoh daripada fakulti saya, Sport Science, di mana some studies we will be looking at performance of our athletes, and this performance of the athletes ini are being recorded. So kita tak akan berjumpa, kita tak akan deal direct dengan athletes ini. Kita hanya ambil the recording tu, kita akan analyse. Contohnya in taekwondo, in martial arts, how many kicks, how many punch. Jadi kita akan kira the frequency semua itu. And those study tidak memerlukan review. So those are among the studies, sebab kalau mereka hantar untuk dipublish, selalunya the journal publication ni akan memohon surat menyatakan it has been exempted, tidak memerlukan reviews. So kalau kita tengok daripada Social Research Council in the UK, di antara contoh-contoh mereka yang they give example of more than minimal risk research, whereby of course tadi kita katakan the vulnerable groups involving sensitive topics, involving potential sensitive topics such as participant sexual or illegal behavior, intrusive intervention, definitely, where research involving safety of the researcher may be in question. Ini ada recently kita ada berjumpa dengan researcher yang dia hanya nak menggunakan questionnaire, tetapi dia menggunakan interview dengan pesakit mental dan juga prisoners. So these are among the example of study yang kita katakan walaupun dia hanya menggunakan questionnaire, kita categorize under more than minimal risk research. We must make sure, or we must, what we want to know, REC wants to know how the safety of the researcher are being taken into consideration when conducting this study. So ini antara guideline yang kita akan rujuk juga bila kita deal dengan more than minimal risk research. Okay, ini ada another example from the European Commission yang menunjukkan the requirement of ethics approval to be obtained, especially mereka menunjukkan again participant yang kita kategorikan tadi sebagai children ataupun vulnerable group. We are also looking at the site where the study to be conducted. So ini antara beberapa rujukan yang kita gunakan apabila kita nak categorizekan sesuatu study itu, whether dia masuk minimal risk ataupun more than minimal risk. So as I mentioned tadi, the categories of reviews will be full board. Kalau full board tadi, you have to present during RSC meeting. Minimal risk, especially selalunya lah, ada juga yang undergraduate kita yang masuk full board. You will be surprised, some of our undergraduate students, they presented very well during the full board meeting. Some postgraduate studies involving minimal risk studies, and of course ada juga UiTM staff research yang menggunakan questionnaire yang kita categoriskan as minimal risk. And this kind of study kita akan masukkan ke dalam track expedited review, where the minute you masuk saja akan terus pergi kepada reviewers, and then in few weeks time you will get the approval letter. And of course tadi saya dah sebutkan yang ketiga, the exemption. Okay, what the RC panel needs to know when submitting your application, basically RC members would like to know the background and the rationale of the proposal, and that's to be written explicitly in your REC form. The nature of data to be collected, procedures, the measuring tools to be used, the type of participants, the place where the data will be collected, the length and method of data storage. These are among the important things that we will be looking at. So among the 7 requirements that we will be scrutinizing will be the social or the scientific value. So kita akan perhatikan ada scientific value atau tidak. Some may be asking, kadang-kadang kebanyakan, especially bila datang daripada undergraduate ni, kita tengok banyak sangat grammatical errors. And then kita tengok method tu not that bad. So kita akan pulangkan. So researcher start to complain. Why REC are looking more on the grammar rather than on the methods of the ataupun the ethics elements in the study. For a study to be scientific, it has to be conducted scientifically. So that is the reason a scientific study is an ethical study. So to be ethical, you have to be scientific. In order to be scientific, whatever that you do has to be validated and it has to be reliable. Itu yang kedua. Thirdly, we must ensure that there is a fair participant selection. Do we use vulnerable subject or do we use only rich participants? Semua ni kita akan perhatikan. We also will be looking at the risk-benefit ratio. Does the benefit outweighs the risk? Sometimes some risky study need to be conducted. Tapi kita nak perlu tengok juga, adakah benefits will outweigh the risk? Kalau kita tengok benefits itu tidak banyak yang boleh diperolehi, sedangkan risknya lebih bahaya, kita menasihatkan mereka supaya menukar ataupun mengubah supaya you do not induce risk to the participants. And of course, independent review. So all application ini akan direview by individuals who will not be in the study. But what happens kalau ada di antara komiti itu tidak ada yang expert dalam bidang yang dihantar oleh applicant. What we normally do, kita akan invite independent reviewer daripada fakulti yang ada expertise itu untuk come on board untuk memberi nasihat kepada kita. And of course, ada tidak informed consent. How the statement in the informed consent, accurate information that will be given to the participant. And of course, we will look at respect for potential and enrolled participants. We must make sure there is the withdrawal rights, protection of privacy, and updates of the newly discovered risks and benefits, result of the research, and maintenance of the welfare of the participants. Itu antara the 7th element that we will be looking at. So, to social scientists, kami hanya guna questionnaire. I mean, how risky could it be? You'll never know. Recently, we received a phone call. REC Secretariat received a phone call and tak tahulah, fortunately ataupun unfortunately, the phone call was picked up by our chairperson herself. So Prof. Shikin was the one who answered the phone call, and this phone call came from members of public. She received questionnaire coming from one faculty asking, macam you kata tadi lah, questionnaire kan, how risky could it be? This study was being conducted to know reasons why parents send children to Chinese school. So ada antara question dalam tu yang agak sensitif. So what this person asked was this study or has this study obtained ethics approval? Kita tak pasti sama ada orang ni ada knowledge atau tidak on ethics, tetapi itulah yang ditanya. Sebab mereka memerhatikan ada beberapa soalan yang sensitif yang ditanyakan dalam questionnaire tu. So what happened? So chairperson that time wrote to the dean, minta dean explain. So apa lagi? Saya rasa Dr. Nabila kenal kan, kawan kita dekan satu fakulti ni terpaksa menjawab balik, dan of course lah that particular lecture yang deal atau conduct the study was being called. So apa yang dilakukan, kemudian dia memohonlah ethics approval dan kita mencadangkan bagaimana dia harus memperbaiki question dalam dia punya questionnaire itu tadi. So what we can advise in questionnaire based study, try as much as possible to avoid sensitive questions, but if you must ask, try to phrase it so that it doesn't look, supaya dia bersesuai dengan our culture. In Western culture, kadang-kadang you tanya some question tu benda biasa, but not to our culture and also religion. So avoid using leading question. We are also looking at the informed consent and assent. Recently, I received a phone call from ada kawan kita who's conducting a research using questionnaire, and now kita tak dapat jumpa face to face, so guna online. So dia tanya, macam mana saya nak buat this informed consent dalam online research ni? Sama juga, similarly, you have your statement before you punya question. So the minute if they answer your questionnaire tu, maksudnya mereka telah memahami and they have given consent in participating in the study. Okay, so we must ensure the confidentiality and the anonymity of the subject ataupun data itu terpelihara. So especially in the online survey, the email addresses of the participant should not be disclosed. Okay, so now kita balik kepada what will happen to our ethics application process. So basically there are 4 steps where the first steps ni, I think sebentar lagi Dr. Amira kalau dia sempat join kita, dia akan terangkan what are the forms to be used. So the first part ni ataupun the first step, applicant yang kena buat. So applicant will need to fill up the forms. So kalau postgrad student, you fill up your forms. After filling up the forms, of course, you akan tunjukkan kepada supervisor you, that supervisor will have to sign and they will have to check. After signing, everything is in order. You will send the application form to your research committee. So saya tak pasti bagaimana di Faculty of Education, your research committee, whether do you have a fixed meeting monthly or as and when it is needed, I'm not sure. Okay, and then the research committee will review. They will look at the content, they will look at the ethical issue. Kalau sebab apa? Kenapa research committee kena buat benda ni dulu? Sebab kita nak membantu applicant ini supaya cepat mereka dapat kelulusan. Kalau mereka hantar terus, kadang-kadang banyak sangat correction yang perlu dibuat, and some of the experts are in the faculty. So you should be able to look at the content. Perlu tak certain studies? Some studies tu kita dah tengok dah banyak. Abundant of studies in some areas. Why this particular study need to be conducted again? Tapi kalau for undergraduate tu adalah dia punya sedikit kelonggaran tu. But for postgraduate, definitely lah kita akan tengok ada ke you punya novelty in that particular study. Alright, so satu lagi sebab kenapa you hantar melalui research committee, so that the faculty is in the know who is submitting, who is not submitting. Itu cara selalunya faculty research committee ni dia di bawah timbalan dekan PJI. So kalau di Faculty of Education bawah Dr. Samsida lah kan, kalau tak silap saya. Betul Dr. Mawar? Okay, so selepas benda ni dah buat correction, so the faculty akan endorse. It will be signed by dekan. Kalau dekan tak ada, the pengurusi ganti will be di timbalan dekan PJI. Mereka sahaja yang boleh menandatangani all the forms, all the application form to be submitted to RC. Sebab kalau sampai ke RC, mereka akan screen. Any application yang tidak melalui research committee of the faculty, they will return the application form. So, katakanlah dah selesai, dah tanda tangan, akan sampai ke RC Secretariat. What RC Secretariat would do, they will screen the application form, and then if it is a minimal risk study, then that particular application will be assigned to reviewer. So kalau ada correction, it will be returned to the applicant. You do the corrections. Kalau he has satisfied what is being needed, then approval letter will be released or will be issued. But if the study is categorized as more than minimal risk, then you will go to stage 4. In stage 4, you need to present. So during the meeting, it will be deliberated whether it will be given conditional approval atau approved. Kalau conditional approval, you need to do correction and then approval letter will be issued. Okay, for the RC forms, there are basically about 12 forms. But don't worry, untuk applying, you need to look at 2, 3, 4, and 5. But if you are dealing with minors, those underage, you need to use RC 10. That is the Assent form. So ini saja yang you tengok, yang lain-lain tak payah tengok. Okay. So what will the reviewer's decision be? The decision will be informed. Okay, yang ini kalau more than minimal risk. Kalau minimal risk, by I think all in all, in 3 weeks, 1 week they take to screen. You may be asking, kenapa lama sangat screening? Because kami menerima, RC Secretariat menerima banyak permohonan. Jadi kadang-kadang kita tak sempat nak siap dalam sehari 2 hari, so they take about 1 week untuk selesaikan. And then a week it will be given to reviewers. Reviewers will take another week. And then kalau tak ada corrections, selalunya dalam minggu ketiga you dah dapat dah ethics approval. So for postgraduate students, it is best kalau you plan bila you nak collect your data. So tidaklah you buat last minute. Bila last minute, kadang-kadang bila ada corrections pula dekat application form you, this will delay the approval letter, the issuance of the approval letter. So always plan ahead. Okay, I'm collecting my data in December. I think by now or the latest by August, I dah kena start submitting my ethics approval application. So as I mentioned just now, there are 4 categories of decisions. Approved, that means no more corrections to be done. Kalau tak approve, you may be getting conditional approval. For conditional approval means corrections to be made. But some yang more than minimal risk, during your presentation tu, kalau presentation itu you will not be able to justify most of the question yang ditanya oleh members, you may need to represent. Tetapi kes-kes yang kena represent ni tak banyak. Mostly conditional approval, kalau conditional approval. Only lately we have a few application yang kita has rejected. Reason for rejected tu ada benda-benda yang dia tidak dapat ataupun tak boleh lakukan. Recently we had even rejected one application coming from one university from outside. Dia nak tanya questionnaire je pun, tapi some of the questionnaires tu macam not much preparation has been made. Kita tengok dalam questionnaire tu ada soalan yang ditanya berulang-ulang kali, you know, macam ad hoc thing lah. So that's why kita disapprove that particular study. So kalau minimal risk research, normally we will recommend to approve without changes or approve with corrections. Okay. Alright, yang not approved tadi saya dah mentionkan. So if you receive conditional approval, what ought to be done? Applicant need to submit the amended documents together with the REC cover letter. Semua kita tunjuk, dah ada dah. If you go to website REC, all these sample or template is being given. in fact the guideline how to fill up the forms pun ada di situ. And attach, one of the reasons selalu yang delay kepada questionnaire based study ni, they do not attach the questionnaires. If you don't attach the questionnaires, how are we, the members, going to scrutinize your questions or your questionnaires items? Itu yang kita nak tengok sebenarnya. And then when you submit your corrections, please highlight the corrections in the relevant documents and of course to be resubmitted to the Secretariat. Okay, so sekiranya ada sebarang queries to your application tu, you can always contact Dr. Amira. Saya tak pasti sama ada Dr. Amira dah ada atau tidak. Dr.
She is here.
I'm here, Datin.
Si Dr. Amira ada dah. Okay, Dr. Amira ni adalah sekretari kepada REC. So Dr. Amira akan membantu sekiranya Dr. Amira tak ada, the EOs or the clerks will be able to help. So these are the numbers and these are the email address of our REC Secretariat. So with that, I thank you. Sekiranya kalau ada apa questionnaire, ada apa-apa soalan nak tanya, you may ask now or perhaps you could save it for later. Okay, so I think I dah habis I punya presentation. Perhaps I would like to hand over to the second part of the presentation to Dr. Amira. Dr. Amira will show us what are the forms or how the forms to be completed when applying for ethics approval. So Dr. Amira, silakan.
Alright, thank you Datin. We proceed to Dr. Amira dulu, yeah, before question and answer. Dr. Amira, you can take the Google Meet.
Mohon maaf, saya pun tak tahu yang saya akan present pagi ni, but let me just open up my slides for applicants. Okay. Right. So this is the UiTM Research Ethics Committee Guide for Applicants. Okay, actually, we have around 13 REC forms, but for the purpose of application, you will only need to fill in form 2, 3, 4 and 5. Ataupun sometimes when your participants involve children below 18 years old, you have to fill in the Assent form. Okay, so I'll be talking about these 5 or 4 forms that you will need to fill in untuk the initial part of the application. So I think this has been introduced by Datin.Sarina just now, which studies that requires the approval of research ethics. So the study that involves human subjects needs to apply for REC approval, which is conducted by UiTM staff, students, or external parties who wants to conduct research in UiTM or on UiTM staffs and students. So REC 1 form, it's actually not a form, it's a flowchart of application. Okay, has Datin explained this just now? I'm sorry because I came in late.
Yes, basically I have introduced that.
Okay, so I'll just skip this part. As Datin mentioned just now, we have 2 categories of reviews, which is full board and minimal risk. Usually full board requires presentation at our meeting, REC meeting, and minimal risk we can expedite it by reviewing the forms before the meeting. Okay, So the decision will be informed 2 weeks after the full board presentation for more than minimal risk, and 1 week of review decision for expedited review after we have received the reviewers' comments. Yeah. So I think I'll just proceed to the RCT forms, which has 5 parts, 5 sections. Okay. The first section is part A, which needs to fill in by the researcher about the details, the title, the name of the researcher. But if you look at the box in red, this section is usually for clinical trials only. Jadi for studies that is not clinical trials, do not fill in this part. Just put NA or dash, but do not leave it blank, please. Semua bahagian di dalam forms ni, please do not leave it blank because it will be considered as incomplete. If let's say it does not applicable to you, then you just put an A or dash. Okay. So and tick which part of the your study is an undergraduate study ataupun postgraduate study, staff or external. Okay. And if it involves if it requires an external REC approval, please tick here yes or no and name the external committee. Right. If you have funding, just circle yes, and you will need to fill in the section C. If none, you don't have any funding for your study, just circle no, and for section C, please do not leave it blank, put NA or dash. Okay, this is part B where you're required to tick the appropriate research details, whether your study involves interviews, questionnaires, focus groups, and so on. And part B2, you can briefly describe your study, and the description should include the independent variable, dependent variable, and the population. And please include only references cited in the background section. Okay, usually the objectives is written as by numbered. It is numbered, okay? And use measurable verbs. I'm not sure about the studies from education faculty, but usually the objectives that is listed is measurable objectives. And please describe a little bit on the expected benefits. Okay, the date of the research commencement, you must put it here, and the expected date of initial data collection. This must be after you have obtained the REC approval. So let's say you submit your application this month, July. So maybe you can expect to have the REC approval in 1 or 2 months. Okay, so maybe you can put it here by September 2020, you can collect your data. Okay, please specify the location of the your research, and if possible, be specific. Do not just put a general location, for example, in UiTM, but put which cawangan, in which faculty. Please be specific about the location. And your research design and methodology, your flowchart should reflect the research design and methodology. And then you must list down the inclusion and exclusion criteria, and then the sample size. How do you calculate the sample size? And if possible, list or put down the reference that you have followed the calculation. Okay, as I've mentioned just now, your research flowchart must reflect your research design and methodology in number 7. and the analysis, statistical analysis. Please elaborate a bit why you are using t-test or ANOVA and so on. This is part C, where you must fill in your funding details if you have funding for your study, but if you don't have, just put an A or dash. Do not leave it blank. Okay. So for part D, this number 1 is for the principal researchers, which is to be filled by the academic staff of postgraduate students only, and the supervisor for number 2. The name, the details, and the most important part is the signature part. Please do not leave it blank, because we have received some applications that does not have the signature of the supervisor, so we will send it back to the applicant. And the co-researcher, okay. So for undergraduate students, they must fill in this part, the co-researcher part. They cannot fill in the number 1 part, penyelidik utama. This one is only for staff or postgraduate students. Okay, I hope that is clear to all. Alright, and this is the most important part, the verification from faculty or state research committee. This needs to be signed and stamped by the chair or co-chair of faculty or state research committee. So the endorsement is by the chair or co-chair of JPN or JPF, Jawatan Kuasa Penyelidikan Negeri atau Jawatan Kuasa Penyelidikan Fakulti. Okay, so that's it for RC2 form. Moving on to RC3. This form is just the research risk classification form, which contains 4 sections, and please do not leave any items blank. Okay. So there are a few questions in this form which you must tick whether yes or no. If it is yes, you must put a brief description. For example, if number 1 you tick yes, are the subjects children under 18 years old? Then if you tick yes, please briefly describe how old is your subjects or your participants. Is it 10 to 12 years old, and so on. Okay. Usually for minimal risk application, most of the items in the forms here is ticked in is no. The answer is no for all the questions most of the time. If most of your answers is yes, then your application usually is more than minimal risk. Okay. So this section is for privacy and confidentiality. Again, if you tick yes, please briefly describe. Okay, for example, does any of the data collection have the potential to cause discomfort? If yes, what discomfort that will be caused to the participants, and how do you relieve the discomfort? You must briefly describe it. Okay. The risk of harms, if any. Right. You can just read all the questions listed here. The forms can be obtained in our website later. I will show it to you. And other ethical issues. If you think there is other ethical issues that is not listed in the checklist, then please briefly describe here. Okay, that's all for RC3 form. It's actually very simple. It's just to answer the questions that is posed to the applicants. And then next one, the RC4 forms, which is the subject information sheet and the consent form. It contains 2 sections, the information sheet for the subjects and the consent form. So usually, you must include both Malay and English versions. If let's say your study population does not understand either Malay or English, then you can include a version of the spoken language of the population. Or for example, if one of the inclusion criteria for your subjects is to understand maybe your subjects only understood Malay language. So you can skip the English version by filling up the RC form in Malay version only. But the inclusion criteria must clearly state that your subjects only understood Malay language. Okay, and please do not use non-expert language or please use non-expert language, and do not include technical jargon. Use lay terms and do not include citations, because this form is for your subjects to read and understand about your study. So it must be as simple as possible so that your subjects can understand what your study is all about. Okay. This is the example of the form. You must state your research title and introduction of your research in lay terms, the purpose of your research and the research procedure. Usually you write it in the form of explanation to your subjects. For example, contohnya apa ya, anda akan diberikan ubat, contohnya macam itulah. Ataupun darah anda akan diambil sebanyak 10 ml. In the form of explanation to the subject. Please do not copy your research procedure from RC2, because that is too scientific, maybe too scientific for them to understand. Okay, so you must put in the benefit of the research for your subjects to understand, and list maybe if there is any risk to the research involved. Okay. And then the confidentiality, write in your, please provide the name and direct telephone numbers of the contact person for the study, usually the PI ataupun the student. Okay, provide the name and the direct telephone number so that the subjects can contact if they have any inquiries. Okay, this is the consent form. Okay. So that's it about REC4. Moving on to the REC5, Narai Semak checklist for applicants, which contains three sections. Okay, for part A, we have this part is for all applicants, meaning that all applicants, it doesn't matter whether the research is categorized as minimal risk or more than minimal risk, you must fill in this form. Okay, it's just a checklist for you to ensure that all your forms are complete. Okay, for part B, this is for clinical trial applications only. If it does not apply to you, then just put dash or not applicable. Okay. And for part C, this is for all applicants. This is just an instruction on how you can submit your forms. Okay, usually we encourage the applicants to submit their forms through the faculty. Meaning that I'm not sure about Faculty of Education, but some of the faculties that we have received, the application is received from the Secretariat of GPF or GPN. Okay, the Secretariat will send in the forms to our Secretariat, and we will process the forms from there on. Okay. The link to the forms, as this is the applicant. So let's say, because I'm not sure the practice in your faculty, But if let's say the applicant have to send the forms by themselves, then they can use this link to send in the forms. Yeah? Okay, and then the signature. Where required, the signature is a must, meaning that if there is no signature, we will definitely send back the application to the applicants, because we have received so many applications with no signature in it. So we cannot process any application without the applicants ataupun the supervisor's signature, especially without the chair or co-chair endorsement, co-chair of the GPN or GPF. Okay, so that's it on REC 5 form. It's very simple. So this one is for REC 12 forms, the Assent form. Orang persetujuan for subjects below 18 years old. Okay. So it is very similar to the subject information sheet, but uses simpler, age-appropriate language which can be understood by the participants. Okay. Just let me show you this. Okay. So this one, the Assent form, this is how it is. It uses simpler language than the subject information forms in REC 4. For example, what is the project about? You can briefly explain. Maybe you have to tone down the language to the appropriate age. Okay, so why do I need to be in this project, and so on. Okay, who can I talk to about this project? So this is, you have to provide your name and your direct contact number. Okay. The the Assent questions. This is just a guide for the researchers on how to ask the questions to the subjects. Okay, has somebody explained about this project to you? So you have to ask your participants, and please tick yes or no. And let's say if your participants cannot read, so you can, instead of taking his or her signature, you can place down the participant's thumbprint, but there must be a witness with the participants. Usually there must be a witness because the minor is unable to read, or whether the research covers sensitive issues. So a witness is required. Okay. So that's it from REC 2 until REC 12. So it's very simple actually. To apply for research ethics approval, just fill up these 4 forms. Okay, 4 forms. Actually, not the most important, but I think the most forms that is you have to fill in quite lengthy is REC 2 and REC 4 or 12 only. Whereas REC 3 and REC 5 is just a checklist, okay, for you to tick yes or no. Okay, and then we have an exemption form, but this one hasn't been finalized yet, so I will not explain about REC 11 for now. Okay, so in summary, you can download all of our forms in the following URL. Actually, we have a new URL. I'll show you after this. This is our old link. And then use the latest version of application forms, because recently we have made some changes to the forms. So please download the latest forms. And then please ensure that all forms are complete and signed by members, and research team before submission again. And right. And please ensure that the form is endorsed by the faculty or state research committee, and only completed forms will be forwarded for RC review. Incomplete applications or applications with major grammatical errors will be returned to the applicants for amendments. And usually all required documents must be submitted to the RC within 2 weeks, 2 working weeks before the RC meeting for the month. This applies to the more than minimal risk application. Okay, that's all. Any inquiries, you can contact our Secretariat, RC Secretariat. On the left is Puan Adinda and on the right is Puan Amy. You can contact them if you have any further inquiries about the submission, the form submission, or any parts of the forms that you feel like you need further clarification on. Okay, this is the link to the submission of RC forms, or you can directly email to our Gmail, rcuitmsubmit@gmail.com. Okay, thank you. That's all. Let me just show you our latest link. Yeah. Okay, so this is our new website. You can download all the forms here. Yeah. RC2, RC3, 4, everything is here. Okay, I'll just post this link to the chat box. Okay, that's all from me. If you have any questions, inshallah, I will be happy to answer. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Amira, for giving us the information basically on the forms, and thank you again, Dr. Sarina. So we're gonna open this for Q&A. We actually have a question, some questions here in the chat box. A question from a student ya. Sekiranya kalau collect data before 2019, permohonan research ethics macam mana? So untuk pengetahuan Datin dan juga committee, the faculty will commence the ethics procedure for the coming semester for all the students. So before that, meaning mereka terlepaslah ethics tersebut. But this is an immediate effect for researchers, for staff dan juga researchers. Yeah, the meaning kita kena immediately lah, whoever staff atau lecturers yang menjalankan pendidikan, we must comply to the ethics committee of ethics procedures.
Mawar, I nak mencelah sedikit. Actually, sebenarnya UiTM pada asalnya menguatkuasakan pelaksanaan memerlukan kelulusan etika ni bermula daripada March 2020. For undergraduate lah, for undergraduate semua sekali. But unfortunately because of MCO ni, kita telah menangguhkan, UiTM telah menangguhkan pelaksanaan itu sehingga March 2021. However, there are few faculties yang mana yang dah biasa buat, kami jalan seperti biasalah, contohnya macam health sciences, sport science. Sebab kami dah bermula benda ni kalau tak silap 3 atau 4 tahun dahulu. So kami tetap go on seperti biasa. For postgraduate study, kami telah berbincang bersama dengan dekan postgraduate study, dan dekan postgraduate study telah pun menguatkuasakan, dia mengatakan semua pelajar-pelajar postgraduate perlu ada ethics approval bermula, kalau tak silap saya semester ni, akhir semester kedua ni ke Dr. Amira? I've forgotten. This coming semester or next year? Dr. Amira?
Is it for undergraduate or
postgrad?
Postgrad should start this year. Tiada penangguhan Datin.
Untuk postgraduate, sebab kami dah berbincang dengan dekan dan juga pengurusan IPSIS hari itu. So dekan telah menguatkuasakan semua pelajar-pelajar yang belum lagi mengumpul data mereka harus ada kelulusan etika ni bermula daripada semester akan datang.
Okay, I think it's clear untuk ethics committee di faculty yang belum mengumpul data lah. Maksudnya mereka perlu dapatkan approval ya, daripada faculty dan juga REC lah. Okay, jadi thanks Dr. Tin for giving us a greater understanding tentang ethics tersebut. We open up for question and answer from the rest of the faculty members, ataupun mungkin sekiranya ada yang nak share the experience yang telah go through or went through the ethics from a different faculty or different university. Probably we can just have this sharing session juga supaya kita melihat how important is this ethics for all of us, right? So anybody?
Tadi ada soalan dalam chat box ni, soalan daripada Dr. Fatin. Dalam qualitative study, kadang-kadang objektif kajian akan berubah selepas data collection. Perlukah hantar semua ethics approval atau ada form untuk amendments? Ya, kita ada borang amendments as long as dia tidak deviate sangat daripada objektif asal. Perhaps you ada mungkin objektif tambahan tetapi dia tidak melibatkan barang perubahan, ada intervention ke, ada data collection yang berbahaya ke. Kalau tidak, you just hantar borang amendment saja. So kita akan keluarkan approval letter yang baru bersesuaian dengan objektif kajian yang terkini.
Okay, there's also another question daripada participant on FB Live. Datin, do I need to apply for UiTM REC approval if I use information or data from the organisation that I am currently employed?
Okay, di sini ada dua benda ya. First, approval for you to conduct study. Secondly, from the organisation that which you are employed is to get the permission to use the data. There's two different things. So of course from your organisation, you need to get the approval stating that yes, you can use certain data or they have approved you to use the data. One thing. Secondly, since you are students of UiTM or staff of UiTM, it's mandatory for you to get ethics approval prior to data collection. Jawapannya, ialah tu.
Itu jawapannya. Approval to conduct study. And number two, from the organisation, right? If the person is using
from the organisation, definitely you need to have the approval.
Yes, all right. Okay, dan juga ethics from the faculty of university.
Yes.
All right. Any more questions?
Okay, while waiting for questions, some I know from this faculty ramai juga yang buat qualitative studies. For those conducting qualitative studies, I know you need to attach the questionnaires or the question that you're supposed to ask, right? I understand some of the questions may not be in that the question that you have given to us earlier. It doesn't matter. At least we know what are the basic questions that you are going to ask your participants. That's what we need. Because kita faham kan bila you buat interview tu, kadang-kadang you get some new questions. Tetapi as long as question tu tidak deviate daripada objective you, that's fine.
Okay. This is another question. Dr. Rosila, untuk PG yang implement for research masters and PhD kami semester, tapi untuk mixed mode March 2021. Sementara undergrad adalah March 2021.
Okay. Itu tadi yang saya tanya Dr. Yang for mixed mode, which means ada you are submitting ada taught courses and juga dissertation or thesis is to be implemented starting from next semester onwards. Bukan cohort baru ya. Siapa yang nak collect data tu, masa itulah dia kena memohon, dia tak kira sebagai cohort baru. And then kepada yang buat for taught courses tu, for research, memang you dah kena mula menghantar.
Okay, that answers the question, Dr. Rusila. Okay, another one Dr. Fatin kata tanya once dah dapat approval berapa lama validity approval tersebut?
Okay, sebab kalau you tengok dalam borang tu, selagi you tak habis, that's why you letak dalam in the REC tu, the duration of the study. Sometimes maybe kalau you buat PhD, katalah from 2020, you expect that you could be able to finish on time 2020 sampai 2023. So selama itulah you punya approval tu valid.
I see. All right, thank you. And this is also another interesting question from Bilal, I guess, a student. Is it ethical to offer inducements or rewards to respondents in our study when they would otherwise not wish to participate? I think this is
Okay.
that we usually do.
What we normally do, rewards, kita tak sebut inducement lah, selalunya kita panggil some kind of reward kan, but we still have to look at how much reward yang you bagi tu. Sebab kalau reward you tu terlalu tinggi, contohnya just by asking or completing a questionnaire, you nak bagi RM100. So REC may advise turunkan you punya reward tu. Sebab that is an element of bribery kat situ. They may want to answer your questionnaire not because they want to answer, but sebab nak dapatkan reward tu. Sebab itu kita tak bagi. Kalau bagi juga yang contoh-contoh students yang ada buat intervention contohnya from physical education, they may have to come for 12 weeks, 3 kali seminggu. So mungkin you nak bagi for each trip they come and see you tu untuk buat intervention tu, you nak bagi okay RM10 ke, minyak motor ke, tambang bas ke, kita buat pertimbangan on how much the token yang you nak bagi tadi.
Macam Dr. Amirah cakap lah, perlu jelaskan berapa emolument dan atas faktor apa. Misalnya untuk perjalanan ke UiTM ataupun ke site. Ya. Okay.
I ingat masa saya tengah buat saya punya PhD dulu, I did in UKM, so I need my participant then was middle aged woman, so orang yang umur 40 tahun ke atas ni, they need to come and see me for 12 weeks untuk exercise, nak suruh mereka exercise tu. So you know sometimes orang tak biasa exercise, nak exercise ni dia malas kan. Okay, so you come and see me 3 kali seminggu, I akan bagi RM50. Bukan seorang RM50, RM50 satu kereta. So in one class 4 orang. Kita pun tak ada duit kan, kita tak ada grant. So it has to be reasonable.
That's interesting. Any other questions?
Ada lagi soalan-soalan lain? Selalunya kalau question.
Siapa tu? Muhammad Azhar, yes.
Minta maaf, saya pun staff Vita Animation, juga buat di EDU as for my PhD. Minta maaf masuk kabel ni pula kan, minta maaf lah sebab dah ada staff kita pun masuklah channel ni. Okay. Saya ingin tanya sebab saya nak buat pilot study untuk for my questionnaire focus group, perlu ada etika juga ke apa untuk pilot study? Kena buat juga ke?
Sebenarnya
for pilot study for ethics protocol ni memang kena buat juga ke?
Memang kena.
Memang kena. Even though I pilot study for students, my students, because this my research topic more about drawings, character design. So some of it from students and one from the professionals in the industry, and then one is for my colleagues with the industry outside Malaysia. So there will be 3 different application ataupun satu je for the ni.
Satu je, tak perlu sampai 3. Jadi what Cik Azhar need to do in your methodology tu, you explain that you will be conducting pilot study. So pilot study tu you tunjuklah how many, and then lepas tu pilot study tu what is the purpose of the pilot study, validation or reliability ke, you explain dalam tu.
Okay. So kena pilot study. Alright, thank you.
Sometimes kita buat pilot study juga untuk nak kira kita punya sample size kan. So kita tulis dalam tu, well we cannot decide the sample size now, we need to conduct pilot study prior to the sample size calculation. Boleh.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, this is interesting. I hope to get more questions. Dia lagi seronok bila kita tanya soalan ni pun kita faham sikit kan?
Yes. sebab kita belum mula lagi ya, whereas other faculties macam Datin cakap lah, fakulti kesihatan telah pun mulakan ethics tersebut, and I happen to actually view on how they conducted the ethics at the faculty level ya. Something that we should we learn from that lah.
Saya nak mengalu-ngalukan lah kalau TD-PJI daripada Fakulti Education nak bukanlah kata kami ni bagus to share experience what we have done, especially in dealing with graduate application. Always welcome to contact FSR punya TD-PJI if you to get some information how we go about doing for undergraduate, because undergraduate pun ramai kan, itu yang big hiccup sikit lah bila kita nak deal dengan undergraduate. But for postgraduate, yes, Dr. Pramjit.
Yeah, I want to ask a question.
Yes, Prof.
Katakan kita buat dekat sekolah menengah, katakan kita buat data collection in sekolah menengah, and the age of the student is Form 3 or Form 4, and we ask the permission from the headmaster of the school. So do we still have to ask the permission from the parents?
Yes, we still have to ask the permission from the parents. From the headmaster, just permission to go into the premise, but to deal with the students, we need to get consent from the parents. Thank you for your question, Prof. Paramjit. Salam. Ya, Dekan.
Regarding Prof. Hamjid yang soalan tu, I think that is a valid why, because as I recall when I was doing my PhD, the gatekeeper tu memang pengetua. I went through all lah, macam EPRD, JPN, PPD, sampai ke sekolah. So bila sampai ke sekolah, memang because it was 10-year-olds, you know, my research participants. So I wanted the consent from the parents. However, the school principal kata, please do not ask the parents. The reason being, dia dah tengok my instrument and whatnot. Dia kata, kalau tanya parents nanti lagi banyak kecoh dan I will not even get data. Sebab the nature is as such, you know, sometimes parents pun may have a lot of say, and pada dia macam if it's within the school compound, it's not hurting anyone, because she took a look at what I did lah, because it was mainly interviewing, see. Memang I tak ada consent from parents.
So it is memang tidak mengikut ethics. Ikut ethics, you must have consent from parents kalau kita deal dengan minors. Walau macam mana pun, kalau kata parents get to know, kita tanya anak ada soalan, kita kena balik.
Parents got to know. Parents did not have any issue sebenarnya. Cuma pengetua tu tak membenarkan masa tu.
Itu yang kita kena explain. Kita kena explain kepada pengetua, yes, walau apa pun alasan dia, kita still kena dapatkan consent from parents. Memang itu international standard. Kat mana-mana pun memang itulah amalan yang kita kena buat. Selagi kita, melainkan kalau kata budak tu berada di asrama. Kalau budak tu berada di asrama, so the warden tu akan jadi the legal guardian pada masa itu.
Okay.
Kalau daily school, memang parents tak boleh lari walau apa pun nasihat pengetua. Ialah kadang-kadang dia pun mungkin tak tahu. So that's why it is our responsibility to explain no matter what kita kena dapat. Itulah.
I mean, I did explain. It's not like sebab benda ni yelah, it's ethics kan.
Yeah.
Cuma because of that, I had to follow lah. In a way, I had to follow what the school dictates lah to some extent. And the pengetua has always been there observing what I'm doing.
Itulah tadi, luckily parents get to know, and parents ni tak jenis fasih, tapi parents nowadays they are very, they're so well versed, and then they know the rights semua. Jangan kita besok dia hantar surat panjang lebar, first thing dia hantar ke UiTM. Macam mana kita nak explain?
Nasib baik it was over years ago lah kan. Tak tahu lah, ethics was dah besar juga masa tu actually. That's why we had to go through EPRD and whatnot.
Tapi itulah kadang-kadang public tak ramai yang mungkin then public pun tak faham. Kita pun tak boleh nak blame pengetua tu. Dia setakat mungkin dia pun nak membantu kita at that time kan.
Yeah, I think that was the intention lah probably, because not wanting, I don't know lah, maybe there are things that I don't know about, but what she knows about the ecosystem of the school, plus the the parents and whatnot. Hence the decision was actually hers. She was the one who decided. We put it this way, you finish it by a certain date. Dia pun tak nak kita lama kat situ, so dia dah kata dah, by certain date I need you to get everything done, but she's forever coming in and observe to some extent. So that was what happened lah.
So alhamdulillah benda tu dah selesai pun, but for now untuk keadaan sekarang ni, keadaan semasa ni, it is best
memang
yes, betul.
Okay.
I think in reference to Prof. Pamjit's question juga tadi, sekarang ni apabila kita nak menjalankan kajian di sekolah, we need to get a letter of approval from the ministry ataupun at least from the PPD. This is a request from the headmaster usually, right?
Dia selalunya once EPRD dah bagi kita permission, kita akan pergi ke Jabatan Pelajaran. So Jabatan Pelajaran kebenaran itu, dan kebenaran daripada Jabatan Pelajaran tu kita kena pergi PPD pula. PPD bagi kebenaran. Kadang-kadang PPD bagi kebenaran, pergi sekolah pengetua kata no, this week tak boleh.
Yes, betul.
Kita kena dengar cakap dia because itu premise dia.
Betul. And in fact ada sekolah yang memang tak benarkan saya masuk pun. I had to come up with a list of like 12 schools. I only went to 2 schools, tapi that out of that 12 schools, I think about 4 schools did not allow me to go and collect data.
Walaupun kita ada kebenaran, so kita kena akur lah, kan? That's the reality of it. Okay, question kat sini, do I need a consent form from an anonymous questionnaire? Yes, kena. Whenever you give the questionnaire tu, selalunya kita attach dengan questionnaire kita tu the consent form. Sebab sekurangnya the consent form tu dia akan menunjukkan yes, I memang nak participate willingly.
Okay, that answers the question.
Issues around using personal data or information collected by a third party. Okay, I nak cakap benda ni secara offhand macam ni pun susah juga. Kalau selalunya kita akan tengok juga. First, of course, kita nak tengok the reliability of the data collection. Secondly, we will be looking at the objective tu tadi yang Dr. Amira dah tunjukkan tadi. We will also be scrutinizing the objective of your study. Sebab kita tak nak nanti kadang-kadang the data collection semua cantik, especially bila kita dapat data from public domain, sometimes kita dah kata, we can obtain the data from public domain, so why do I need to obtain ethics approval anymore? Okay, betul, data tu semua orang tahu come from which organisation. Tetapi because of the objective of your study tadi, probably you try to correlate ke, it can cause, you can punish the reputation of the organisation. Bila that happen, they may sue us. The first yang dia akan sue is UiTM, then faculty, then the researcher. So, ini yang kita akan cuba perhatikan bila you hantar application you kepada RC. So back to soalan ni tadi, what the ethical issues surround using personal data or information collected by a third party. Kalau di sini, of course, the reliability and the validity of how the data being collected. Itu akan menjadi ethical issues-nya.
Okay.
Ya, siapa tu tadi?
Badrul dari
Dr. Badrul.
Saya ada soalan kait dengan menjelaskan tentang
Dr. Badrul,
Kuat sikit Dr. Badrul.
quite hear you.
Datin.
Ya, silakan Dr. Badrul.
Okay, bagaimana dengan kajian yang merujuk kepada responden terdiri daripada orang asli sebagai contoh?
Okey.
Dia ada research yang berbentuk mengkaji tentang kebudayaan sebab dari aspek sosiologi nak mengetahui tentang kepercayaan mereka. Jadi pelaporan tu nak dibuat dalam bentuk penulisan.
Ya.
Adakah sebarang panduan yang kita boleh gunakan?
Okey, balik kepada persoalan pertama tadi, if it is research involving human, kena dapat ethics approval. Yang keduanya, kalau kita daripada UiTM, of course kita kena dapat ethics approval before kita conduct study itu. Okey, kalau kita nak buat kajian dengan orang asal ni, first and foremost, kita kena ada kelulusan daripada Jabatan Jakwa. Okey, selalunya bila kita berhubung dengan orang asal, Jakwa ni akan sentiasa menjadi pengiring kita lah. Okay, that's why dalam kita punya information sheet kita ni, dalam consent form kita tadi, seboleh-bolehnya, benda ni pernah kami bahaskan hari itu, seboleh-bolehnya kita kena ada dalam bahasa yang mereka fahami, walaupun kita ada interpreter. Sebab saya pun sendiri pernah menjalankan kajian dengan orang asal ni di Taman Negara. Pada masa itu kami tidak memberi mereka mereka tidak baca direct daripada information sheet tu, kita bacakan dalam bahasa kita dan mereka translate. So now ikut trend terkini, masa sekini, kita memerlukan kalau boleh, sebab ada juga orang asal yang sekarang dah boleh membaca, jadi mereka lebih senang kalau dapat dituliskan dalam bahasa yang mereka fahami, selain daripada kita menggunakan bahasa kebangsaan kita. So tidak memadai setakat kita ada interpreter. Perlu ada apa yang patut mereka ketahui tentang kajian kita tu dalam bentuk penulisan dalam bahasa mereka. Saya harap itu membantu Dr. Badrul.
Okey, satu lagi Datin, kalau Datin boleh tolong saya. Bagaimana dengan kajian yang merujuk kepada objek-objek yang sensitif bersifat keagamaan, bersifat customary law sebagai contoh? Macam mana?
Okey. Kalau yang begitu, that's why saya pun tak boleh nak jawab benda ni kata perlu tak perlu kan. That's why ini perlu diteliti oleh jawatan kuasa, sebab dalam jawatan kuasa kita ada orang daripada Pusat Islam, kita ada daripada Legal Office. Andai kata kami tidak dapat memberi pertimbangan, kami akan menjemput orang-orang daripada luar, dan pernah pun berlaku kadang-kadang kita jemput orang daripada JAKIM to come on board to assist us. Sebab kita kena tengok daripada semua aspek. Oleh itu, always regard RC ni sebagai the extra eye. Kita bukan nak menyusahkan researcher, saya pun researcher juga, jadi ini kita ada extra eyes yang membantu kita yang melihat daripada semua aspek. So harap saya membantu Dr. Badrul lah daripada segi tu.
Baik, terima kasih Datin.
Whatever you have to do, tak apa, you submit. Perhaps mungkin dekat research committee you akan membantu juga kan. Okay, kalau kata okay pada pandangan mereka dah nampak okay, tetapi bila sampai dekat RC, sebab kita ada orang daripada ASIS, kita ada orang daripada Pusat Islam membantu kita, mereka kata oh ini tak sesuai, you kena ubah. That's why kalau ada benda-benda sensitif ni kita akan panggil you. Panggil tu bukan apa, kita nak tanya lebih lanjut. Boleh tak you tukar, boleh tak you buat, you add dan sebagainya macam itulah. Hope they will help you.
Terima kasih Datin.
Thank you for the question. Okay, kat sini untuk consent form from Dr. Hamimah, responden perlu tanda tangan atau tik saja sebagai tanda setuju untuk participate. Kau sebagai setengah orang. Okay, kalau kita buat online, online jarang orang kita gunakan sebagai tanda tangan. Kita letakkan tik. Tapi bila kita buat bersemuka ni, kebanyakannya tanda tangan dia tak nak bagi detail. Kita terimalah. Kita terima. Again from Dr. Amira, Dr. Minaj, jika questionnaire diberikan secara online, usually boleh beri statement seperti yes, betul. Agree? Saya setuju yang itu. Cuma ada juga recently kita ada terima satu permohonan, dia buat online, dia tanya cukup ke setakat itu, mengatakan by apa ni, answering the question, meaning that they will agree to participate lah. Kalau soalan itu tidak sensitif, kadang-kadang kita terima macam tu. Tapi sebaik-baiknya kita letakkan all the clause tu, tadi yang important clause yang patut ada tu should be there. Sebab there's one study kami dapat daripada, ini cerita benar daripada staff kita juga. Dia try nak publish, she's a lady, she called, in fact she spoke to me. Dia kata, Datin boleh tak kalau in future we hope that ethics committee really scrutinized. Saya tanya kenapa pula, dia kata sebab dia nak publish satu artikel, dia punya artikel ni suddenly di journal tu punya publication minta dia hantar semua dokumen-dokumen yang dihantar kepada jawatankuasa ethics. So she submitted. Ada certain clause yang tak ada dalam dia punya statement itu, therefore dia punya paper tu tak dapat dipublish dalam that publication, that one case. So dia kata, I dah miss that one, it's a high index journal, I dah miss sebab ada certain clause yang I tertinggal. So dia kata boleh tak
Datin, are you there?
So ini bagi menjawab soalan tu tadi. And then recently there's one study, dia nak masuk ke paper Q1. Kak Amira ingat, dia minta boleh tak bagi dia retrospektif punya approval. Sebab that journal publication itu minta dia ethics approval. Kalau dia dapat provide ethics approval code, then only dia dapat publish. Unfortunately kami tak dapat, and of course dia miss the Q1 punya publication, sayang, just because dia tak ada. It's a questionnaire study. Sayang kan? So we hope kita dapat membantu, kita sama-sama bantu kita supaya skor naik, dan at the same time researcher ni buat research dia dalam keadaan yang sangat saintifik, bukan shortcut, dan mengikut seperti apa yang sepatutnya kita buat. Okay, itu soalan, apa tadi yang soalan from Dr. Zuraimi ke? Dia tanya tentang okay, tadi
dah jawab tadi.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Hamimah punya soalan pun dah jawab. Okay. Oh, sangat seronok kan dengan Fakulti Education ni, ada soalan-soalan, jadi kita boleh really share. So kalau ada apa-apa lagi soalan ke daripada, kita ada 2 minit je lagi.
Any more questions?
Ada, saya.
Silakan.
Assalamualaikum Datin.
Waalaikumsalam.
Okey, saya Dr. Sarina, saya PDPJI. Terima kasih pada Datin, terima kasih pada Dr. Mawar kerana alhamdulillah kita dapat menganjurkan sesi kita pada pagi ini. Saya harap semua staf Fakulti Pendidikan dah dapat pencerahan berkenaan dengan etika pendidikan ni. Anyway Datin dan juga rakan-rakan fakulti, saya just nak share saya punya pengajian saya, dan saya tak pasti lepas ni bagaimanakah pembunuhan etika saya ni akan berada di peringkat orang kata minimal risk ataupun more than minimal risk. Okay, my PhD involve penggunaan mobile virtual reality sebagai alat bantu mengajar. So sebelum ni saya buat PhD, saya memakaikan orang mobile virtual reality di mana dia perlu memakai head mounted display pada mata dia lah sepanjang 1 jam training for safety and health. Tetapi apabila
area apa ya? Macam kami punya device yang kami guna dalam sport science je.
Betul. Dia sejenis device head mounted display tapi dia bukan dalam makmal, tapi menggunakan as simple as mobile phone. Cuma kena pakai dalam head mounted display yang macam helmet letak atas kepala tu. So this study conducted for 1 hour for my 30 participants in industry, Dan dalam questionnaire saya tu saya ada beritahulah, maknanya kalau sebab akan ada risiko apabila pemakai tu mempunyai masalah penglihatan dan juga darah tinggi, dia akan merasai sickness, the motion sickness tu tadi apabila dia pakai alatan ni. Dan bila saya tulis paper saya untuk Scopus for my PhD and it was advised for Q1 paper, saya tersangkut sebab saya tak ada kelulusan ethics. So it's just for sharing lah. So saya sayang kat situ lah. Bila paper saya tu saya tak dapat nak extend for my Q1 publication because of saya menggunakan alatan tu, tetapi ada disclaimer kat bawah saya tu pada participant, di mana apabila mereka menggunakan mobile virtual reality ni, mereka akan merasa motion sickness ataupun boleh memberi risiko kepada peserta yang mempunyai masalah penglihatan ataupun mempunyai masalah darah tinggi. So dekat situ saya memang tersangkutlah sebab saya tak mohon ethics pada awalnya. Itulah.
Thank you for sharing, Dr. Syamsidah. It's a very good sharing. I mean good points kan. Kadang-kadang kita nampak macam tak baik, tetapi kalau katalah pada masa tu you have applied, mungkin wherever you have done it, mungkin they would advise kita akan excludekan those people yang ada hypertension kan, so that to kita try nak reduce the risk tu lah tadi. They could have advised you that lah. Amit jangan gunakan subjek tu, tapi sayang lah, but it's a very expensive experience lah kan. Kita ada soalan from Dr. Badrul. Salam Datin, sekiranya responden penyidikan melibatkan kanak-kanak, perlukah penyidik dapat surat background checking daripada polis atau agensi tertentu? Kenapa nak kena buat background checking tadi ya, Dr. Badrul?
Pedophile.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Okay, kalau study-study yang macam tu, selalunya kalau kes-kes pedofil ni, of course kita tengok di mana dia berada. Kalau dia berada dengan parents.
Bukan Datin, maksud saya, background checking oleh polis tu nak menentukan dia clear daripada tuduhan pedofile sebelum dia melibatkan diri dengan penyidikan bersama kanak-kanak ni.
Kalau ikut kita tidak. Kalau ikut RC tidak. Kita tak perlu mendapatkan background checking. Cuma kita akan tanya, bagaimana you nak pastikan tadi? Kalau you kata okay background checking. Sebab background checking ni, itulah saya nak bagi satu keputusan yang ni tak berani sebab ini melibatkan law. Kalau Dr. Haswira ada, probably Dr. Haswira could advise us on this. Ada perlu atau tidak background checking daripada polis. Kadang-kala kemungkinan perlu sebab kita juga nak memerhatikan, kita nak tengok daripada safety orang yang collect data dan sebagainya. So in this case saya tak berani nak kata absolutely no ataupun yes sebab ada masanya kita perlu, ada masanya tidak.
Ini mungkin pengalaman saya masa di Melbourne.
Okay.
Jadi Australia mereka sangat menekankan tentang background checking ni sebab sehingga yang nak menjadi guru pun harus lalui background checking.
Sepatutnya
kan? Betul, sebab mungkin kes-kes begitu sangat hebat di sana lah.
Exactly.
Dalam nak melindungi hak kanak-kanak tu. Jadi saya juga melalui proses yang sama untuk saya declare sebab background checking saya hanya valid setahun saja.
I see.
So sijil saya itu hanya setahun saja. Jadi kalau tempoh 2 tahun kutipan data itu saya harus renew.
Betul.
Background checking saya. I'm just wondering whether we should apply it here.
Okay,
or
apa yang saya
kalau kita nak apply, mana governing body yang patut supervise? Just my thought je lah whether we should have this or not. But if background checking macam ni will betul-betul menyusahkan researcher lah. Tapi itu antara RC di sana. Jadi benda-benda macam ni sebenarnya akan hinder juga kita daripada nak pursue lebih tinggi lagi research tu. Sebab dia makan masa untuk kita dapatkan. Selain macam kes kita buat penyelidikan, sebab fakulti pendidikan biasanya engagement dia dengan industri di sekolah. Whether it's private or public schools. Kita dapati macam Datin sebut lah, kalau ada parent yang tak kisah anak dia ditemuduga, which is okay. Macam mana dengan parent yang memang betul-betul tak bagi cooperation langsung. and then they demand for some kind of measurement ataupun satu public declaration yang this person whoever would like to come over to meet my children, they are free from any convict ataupun conviction from crime. So if I were to be the parent, I would also want to see whether because I don't believe schools. You see as because schools, headmasters or managers, they are also want to help researcher untuk buat projek dia, tapi yalah, cerita-cerita macam ni pun datang, kita pun tak pastilah. Itu saya punya thought je lah.
But thank you very much for sharing us, Dr. Amira. Perhaps Dr. Amira, kita boleh KIV benda ni untuk kita discuss further di RST nanti, Dr. Amira?
Ya, Datin.
It's a good point kan? Kita pun bukan kita nak menyusahkan, cuma kita betul lah tadi, kita pun tak tahu macam kita kat sini. Sekarang ni kita hanya ambil psychometric test saja, whether orang tu layak jadi cikgu atau tidak kan. For what you might know, dia pernah buat apa ni dosa-dosa besar kan. Tapi hopefully by doing background checking ni, kita rest assured that anak kita yang hantar kat sekolah tu ditangani oleh cikgu yang ada background yang bagus lah kan. Okay, thank you so much Dr. Badrul. We will look into this and perhaps kalau ada apa-apa nanti kita share nanti, sebab kita pun ada juga ramai associate member ni adalah wing ataupun our right hand, REC right hand yang berada di faculty yang boleh disseminate information, latest information kalau ada daripada REC. Prof. Nur Aziz, thank you Prof, you are on board. Good point, VR design ada yes, betul. Thank you very much for all the support. I rasa fakulti pendidikan ni tak ada masalah kot nak memohon ni, sebab I think you all ada memang good support daripada pihak pengurusan, sampailah orang kata otai-otai profesor-profesor yang ramai yang berada di fakulti pendidikan ni semua yang I rasa akan memberi sokongan kepada keperluan mendapat ethics approval. Thank you so much to all.
Alright, thank you so much. Sekian tadi, masa pun telah tamat. Sekian tadi webinar disampaikan oleh Prof. Madia Datin Dr.Sarina Muhammad Yusof bersama Dr. Amira. Thank you so much Datin. Semoga kita mendapat manfaat dan memahami keperluan dan proses etik dalam penyelidikan, bermula daripada pelajar-pelajar, seterusnya staf pentadbiran juga dan staf akademik khususnya. So it's important for us to follow the ethical guidelines issued in order to ensure the safety and sensitivity of the participants of a study and safeguard researchers, students and organizations. So sebelum kita berundur diri, saya ingin mengucapkan berbanyak terima kasih kepada Datin sekali lagi kerana sudi meluangkan masa, Dekan, PM Dr. Nabil atas sokongan, Timbalan Dekan PJI Dr. Syamshidah serta Puan Zuraimi daripada EDU Corporate yang banyak membantu. So sekian saja, semoga kita bertemu lagi di sesi webinar yang akan datang. So thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh.